Hello and welcome to the DEI is podcast, a podcast about DEI practitioners by DEI practitioners for DEI practitioners and the organizations seeking their help and support, where we dive deep on issues related to the DEI industry from an insider's point of view. The DEI is podcast is produced by Diverity PBC, a startup based in the San Francisco Bay Area that matches independent people and culture experts like DEI practitioners with organizations seeking their help and support. The history of the diversity, equity, inclusion industry, as we know it today, started in the 1960s, starting with the Equal Pay Act of 1963, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and the Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967, with efforts focusing on affirmative action, non-discrimination, and what we commonly refer to as representation. We've come a long way since then, but the DEI industry is still prone to boom and bust cycles, all too common in the context of capitalist economics. But what it looks like on the ground is there is an inciting incident, for example, the murder of George Floyd, and a sudden uptick of interest, a hockey stick moment, followed by a tapering off or even a crash. What DEI consultants know is that for this work to have the greatest positive impact, DEI has to become integral to how normal work functions are conducted, not just in the C-suite, but throughout entire organizations. Here today to explore how we might do that is Valerie Williams, founder and managing partner of Converge firm. Hey, Valerie, how are you?
I am doing great today. How are you?
Doing really, really well. I was, earlier I was sharing with you that it's really hot in the Bay Area, and I think it's
Yes,
hot down where you are as well.
that's
But
right.
it was the longest day of the year yesterday, which is the I think the official mark of summer, and I like summer, so I'm happy about it.
Same here. Same here. I'm in LA, so it's definitely sunny and hot. And 75 kind of feels like 85 these days.
Yeah, the sun is strong. So to kind of set the context here, for you, what is the issue with organizations continually going after like low-hanging fruit rather than the full potential of the transformation that we know that DEI can offer?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Enrico. I think low hanging fruit has its place in DEI work. It's certainly helpful when we're starting to kick off a strategy process with our clients. It may take a few months to really pull together a thoughtful, thorough strategic plan. And so low hanging fruit really has its place with really having something you can do in the meantime while you're building a plan. But you can't stop there. I think organizations often feel like, okay, great, we're going to do this training, or we're going to, launch this ERG or this committee, and we're going to stop there. That's the low hanging fruit for them. But, if you stop there, it's not really going to be integrated within the organization. And so you really gotta push beyond those low hanging fruit moments to a more thorough strategic plan.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, people kind of have this idea that, how to say, a lot of times people think about problem solving in like a very linear fashion or sequential fashion, maybe. So, like, first we do this, then we do this. But since everything's interrelated and time bound, we got to work on a lot of different things all at once, or at least that's what I know. I don't know if it's the same for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You got to do your keep the lights on stuff while actually building a plan and running pilots at the same time and measuring impact on things. And so it's a very complex plan when you're actually doing an integrated DEI strategy within an organization. There's a lot of different work streams happening at the same time.
Yeah, so I think my first question to the audience who are tuning in, and thank you everybody for tuning in once again. But there are different ways of going about this, right? And so the question is, do you prefer sprinting toward DEI goals or moving steadily toward them? So if you can explain in the comments, that would be great. I think we're all looking for better ways forward, and one of the best ways that we can do that is to leverage social learning. So learning from one another, from our peers, people who we consider to be equals. So love it if you could all share that. While we wait for those answers to come in, I think we'll pivot to our main body of questions. today. So many have the embedded assumption that the quote real value of DEI consulting is that it will increase profits or at least the bottom line, or maybe even help organizations to navigate conflict, which often is not what DEI consultants are directly concerned with addressing. So from your view, what is the real value that DEI consultants can bring to organizations?
I love this question. I think it's such an important question for us as a body of practitioners to consider and to really check in on ourselves annually, quarterly on this question. I now believe that the true value that we bring to our clients is our ability to help them set a plan that works for them, that is impactful and meaningful, but that is something that they can manage, right? To the question about thinking about this in a sprint way or in a long-term way, we think about this as a journey. This is a long-term journey. So you're an organization that's going to be doing this forever. Like, as long as your organization is going to be around, you're going to be doing DEI work. So how can we really design a plan that works for you, but that will help you grow and evolve as your organization grows and evolve? So I really think that our value as practitioners is to demystify this very complex space for our clients and to be able to provide them with a sustainable plan so that the work doesn't die with the committee, if the committee leaves or the DEI person leaves or the consultant leaves, right? We want it to sustain beyond our time there.
And so, we use that language of sustaining as well, right? But I think what I'm noticing is that often what organizations would like us to do is to stick with them post engagement and to hold their hands during implementation. But often we can't do that, right? They don't have the budget, we don't have the capacity. There are all kinds of issues here. So sometimes people, like, we have this plan in place, but then they're not really seeing that the plan is for them to then implement, right? So I don't know, like, what does it look like? Because I feel like the issue is one of integration, right? So what does it look
Mm-hmm.
like to truly integrate DEI work in a given organization? So of course you're saying like it has to be really particular, really specific, but just kind of generally speaking, like post engagement, like how can clients be incorporating what we've been doing with them into what they think of as their real work?
Yes, yes, so important, right? So, we often will, as strategists, go into an organization, uncover what's happening in the organization, give recommendations on where they should, or how they could improve things that are happening within the organization, and then we're like, okay, good luck, like go do what we told you to do. Good luck, right? So I think part one is how can we, with our service offerings, really be thoughtful about understanding where our client is at the current moment, so that our recommendations can be as specific and tailored as possible, as you mentioned. But beyond that, I think for us, we had to go beyond our strategy of like building a strategy. Like, yeah, we'll do discovery work, we'll hear from your employees, we'll build a strategy. And to your point, sometimes we stayed on with implementation and integration, and sometimes we couldn't. But even if we couldn't, we provide our clients with a lot of guidance on a lot of elements of like how DEI fails. So one, communication, right? Like, how are we clearly communicating this work and how are we circling back with employees? Two, change management. It's a real thing. Like, how are you structuring change management within your organization? Like, really going through these elements of like elements where integration and implementation fails, and really giving our clients guidance on that. Now, we would love to stay on, to your point, to really help guide them through that, because resources can only take them so far. But I think it's really not just thinking about, again, those recommendations, but how far can you go into an operating model? Who owns what of these recommendations? What team within your organization needs to own some of these recommendations? So I think we need to be as specific as possible, but I also want our clients to be able to, pay us to help them with this implementation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, something that I wish that I had the time and capacity to do sometimes is to stick with people at least through their first attempt, you know?
Yes.
Because I think what often happens is people make the attempt, it doesn't go perfectly, and often, we never say that it would go perfectly to begin with. Like, in fact,
Right.
we're upfront about like this, it's not about being perfect, right?
Mhm.
But when you don't have a roaring success the first time out of the gate, a lot of people get discouraged. And what really needs to happen is that looped learning thing, right? Okay, so it
Mhm.
didn't quite work. Let's go back. The plan is still solid. We just have to figure out how to do it slightly different.
Yeah.
What are those changes going to be? Let's document this so if it doesn't work out again, we can come back and try it another time.
That's right.
Because but people are not happy with that. Like, I'm just curious, do you have any insight as to why that might be?
Well, I think you started to go into the road down the road of framing. I think it's important to frame recommendations as pilots. These are going to be pilots because there's so many things that influence an employee's well-being and an employee's sentiment around inclusion within an organization. And so you're going to roll out a program or try an initiative, and it may or may not work, to your point. And so I think what we've started to do is to frame our recommendations as pilots. So we're going to pilot
Love
this,
it.
and we're going to figure out, at the end of this pilot, if this makes sense, if this had the intended impact that we wanted it to, and if not, we'll try a different pilot. And I think that language really helped frame that there's no silver bullet, right? Like we're designing. This is a little bit of an art, and your organization is the clay. We're like trying to figure out what actually works within with your org.
You know what I love about that too is we get so many people asking us about like the right things to say, and what they're getting at is often language, and more
Mhm.
specifically like how to frame things. But right there, what you did was I just want to highlight it, elevate it as good communication, right? So you've taken something that is familiar, framed it in a way that is more accessible, that people can say, "Oh, this is not supposed to be some shiny, perfectly crafted thing. We are seeing if this works, and we are knowing that if it doesn't work, we can try another pilot." Right. So that even that simple change of language helps more people to get on board and the message to be communicated a little more clearly. We've got
Mhm.
a couple comments here. We've got one from Sabrina. Thank you so much for your contribution. Her preference is to move steadily. One of the issues that she sees is that companies have unrealistic expectations on how quickly change can occur. Yeah, sounds familiar.
Mhm.
This is hard work that takes time, and that's hard, like the heart in your chest work that takes time if you want to see long lasting change. Yeah, absolutely. We've got another comment from Liza Katzman, also a Diversity PBC community member, so very nice to have you comment. Thank you, Liza. Who also prefers to move steadily unless there's something that needs to be addressed immediately for a particular employee or individual. Otherwise, it's not sustainable and doesn't allow for proper change management. Okay, yes, yes. Thank you both so much. Anything else to add there, Valerie?
Just shout out to Liza. Hi, Liza. Thank you for your comment too, Sabrina. I agree with both of you. It's a steady race. This is slow and steady, and I often say, um, as long as your culture took to evolve to its current point, it's going to take just as long or longer to shift or change something. And so we got to be patient with ourselves as we roll this out.
That is a fantastic point. I mean, to draw a parallel here, one of the issues I love to cook. One of the issues that a lot of people have is they don't rest their food long enough, right? But for a lot of things, what you got to do is you got to rest it for half as long as you cooked it. And if you rush it,
Mm,
it's just not going to be as good. And we all want to eat
yeah.
good food, you know? So,
Yeah. That's why I'm impatient in that sense.
and to be fair, I burn my mouth regularly. So I know what I'm talking about. So back to the audience question. I've got another one. What is one clear indicator that we as DEI consultants need to do some work to get a client on the same page as to what DEI really is? So I think that loops back to that communication piece that you raised for us, Valerie. And if you got thoughts or comments, please do add them in the chat here. My next question for you, Valerie, is how can we as a body of professionals work with one another to better articulate for our prospective clients what we're seeing as far as, one, DEI work that needs to be done more globally, and two, DEI work that can realistically be undertaken by given organizations successfully?
Yeah, it's such a thorough question. I mean, I think my my first thought, I think about again these pilots that are running in this moment that we're in, where we're in this great reset. The workplace is changing. The pandemic has changed it. All these things have the great resignation. All these things are happening in the workplace, and so there's this opportunity for us as a body of practitioners to say, what is going to be our thing in this moment of reset? How are we going to push organizations forward? And I think about like the 4-day work week. There were a group of people that came together and said, this is going to be our thing. What is going to be our thing? So I think as practitioners, I would love to see us collectively come up with what that recommendation or what is the one shift that we want organizations to be doing during this time, during this reset. So that's my first thought on that. I think, what organizations really need to be doing, and this is not going to be a surprise to anyone that talks to me, is really get clear on those beliefs, your why, your vision for this work. And if you're not clear on that, that's going to make this space very complicated and going to make it hard for you to roll out anything. And it will help you as things continue to come into society. Things are going to keep happening. It's going to help you figure out how to authentically serve your employees and your ecosystem as these things happen. If you get clear on your vision, that's really what we want organizations to do in this moment. But I also want us as practitioners to have some collective force behind where we want to push this workplace. So if anybody has ideas, drop them in the chat, let us know, or initiatives that are happening out there that we can all put our weight behind, definitely let us know.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think one of the ways that we can start building that collective power is by building community. So it's for those who are watching, a lot of you are DEI practitioners yourselves. Although if you're watching from the organizational side, what you might not know is we're often fairly isolated, right? We're busy. We operate in small firms. We don't often have the opportunity to come together. So what I would love to see is for us to build greater community. And to your point, for anybody who might have been listening to what you were just saying and like, oh, that sounds kind of, or like just very easily dismissed, right? Like, oh, finding a thing, whatever. I'll remind everybody that we have the weekend because of unions, and they made having a break from work their thing, right? We also have stronger child labor laws, which certain parties are trying to roll back. But we have these protections because people got together, they did the thing, and it took a long time. It took a long time, a lot of blood, a lot of sweat, but they got it done, and now we take it for granted. We can do the same thing. There is no reason why we can't.
Yes.
So in your view, what can organizations and organizational leaders be doing to ensure that they are ready to work with internal and external DEI professionals, and how do they get there?
Yeah, I mean, after starting with that why, because you got to get clear on your why, I think you also need to set realistic expectations of what can actually be accomplished in an engagement. I think sometimes we get clients that are expecting just the world in 3 months, and we're like, okay, well, we have to really understand your organization and take the time to be able to give thorough recommendations. And so I think what organizations can do to be better prepared to work with us is to properly scope engagements, but also to be open and flexible and to allow your consultant to be able to guide you. So I think, again, start with your why. That will inform who's your right partner, given their background and their experience, and then really be thoughtful about how you scope an engagement, but allow for some flexibility for that consultant as they come in and learn your organization.
So what I'm hearing you say is we need to be really meticulous when we are laying down the foundations because, of course, everything else rests on top of that. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. 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 I mean, we've worked with so many clients that were going back to the foundation because they rolled so many things out without doing that. And then something got stuck. And what got stuck normally is because there's misalignment on our collective vision for this work. So foundation setting is critical to this work.
I don't know if you were ever a fan of that Gary Larson cartoon, The Far Side, but I
Oh
remember
yeah.
one where it's God pulling an earth out of the oven, and it's still steaming, right? And the text says something doesn't smell right. Yeah, like that's the whole comic. It's like, yeah, that would explain so much.
Yes. I love that.
So, my other question to the audience here is, if you could fast forward to a year from now, what's one thing you want organizations engaged in DEI work to be better at? So I can think of a few things, but I'm just really curious to see what others in the
Me
community
too.
think.
Me too. I got a list. Okay.
All right, maybe we can share some of those in a little bit, but
Yeah.
I'm really curious to hear from your perspective. How can we as DEI professionals better support our clients in handling the full complexity of DEI work? So not just in being prepared, but like once they are prepared, right? It often is a lot more complex than they reported to their DEI consultants or CDO. But clients kind of come to us with this thing like, this is the problem. But in that discovery phase, we will often uncover, in fact, that there is a lot more to the problem than meets the eye. So I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it happens all the time. It happens literally all the time. We're like, oh, we didn't know we were walking into this. Okay. I think for us, you know, one thing I would recommend is that we are getting so much more thorough with our recommendations. We used to really just give general guidance and general areas of focus, but we've been really thorough with our recommendations. So instead of just saying, okay, great, you need to roll out this training or have this curriculum for your organization. It's like, yes, and you have to think about this change management process. This is how you communicate that training. This is how you tie that training into this program that you're doing. It's like the full gamut of what needs to be kind of rolled out when you roll out of a plan. So not just programs and initiatives, but policies and communication structures and these change management elements that I keep pointing back to. I think that's really where the rubber meets the road. And so we have to be able to, with our recommendations, not just give the high level pieces, but get clear on what we're solving for, get clear on a clear strategic framework, get clear on goal setting. We haven't even talked about KPIs today. I can't believe it. But get clear on all of these things because, I mean, it's just any of those things can really make an effort fall flat. And so you got to really think through all of those elements.
Yeah, sometimes I kind of flash back to that experience of like learning how to drive. Like
Mm,
there's so many, that you got the
yes,
pedals and the wheels, but then there are so many other things, and it's
that's
like,
right.
oh no, it's fogging up. What do I do? Like,
Yes.
right. But the thing is, like, sometimes when you are a big organization, it's not really a car that you're driving, but it's an airplane. And, if you've looked into
Mm,
the cockpit, it's like, I don't even know what half the stuff does.
yeah.
And that's all right. But once you get through it that first time, then you build the confidence, right?
That's right.
And I think that's often what a barrier is. So if we're talking about the law of minimal barriers, like nervousness or hesitancy or even a
Mhm,
little bit of fear, that's not
mhm,
nothing. Like that's
mhm.
real. And to your point, when we can get really granular and help people to walk through, then they feel a lot more secure in doing that.
That's right. That's right.
So, the last thing that I've got for you is how can DEI professionals and the organizations that we work with better prepare to be able to sustain the work or to continue making progress on the work post engagement, even as the complexity of the context that the work sits in is, to your point, evolving in real time?
Yeah, you gotta be committed. I mean, I think that what what establishing your perspective and vision does is that it allows you to just keep going. A big element of inclusive leadership is just to be able to keep moving, keep going forward. And so I think the more that we can equip organizations to be able to do that, the better off they will be to move on in their journey. So I think that's one thing. And then again, as thorough as we can be with our recommendations, as specific as we can be with our recommendations, we have the benefit as practitioners to have a breadth of visibility to so many organizations. And so, how can we bring that knowledge into our clients in a way, again, that meets them where they are and sets them up for success? And so I think our unique positioning allows us to be able to do that.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not gonna advocate that we give away the work for free or anything like
Right.
that, but there is something to building good relationships with people, right? Perhaps in an advisory capacity or what have you, but
Mhm.
it is really building these relationships that's going to allow us to build something of a safety net for ourselves, right? So when we're unsure, when something weird happens, are there people that we can reach out to personally, professionally, spiritually, emotionally, who can
Mhm.
kind of help us out, And it's like,
Absolutely.
I think what I would love for people to understand is there are lots of people in the United States, around the world, who are engaging in this work, right?
Mhm.
So some might be a little further along in that process, some might just be getting started, but you might actually have some insight to share with somebody else on
Mhm.
their issues, right? And so by relating to one another in this way, we can move the work forward without having to resort to the paid expert all the time, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think that as experts, we can also be doing more to perhaps connect our clients with one another. That's not always possible,
Yes.
but I know that when I was teaching, when I was able to leverage a student that I had had greater success with a student who was struggling a little bit, they were often closer to the same level. A lot of that fear kind of went away. They're able to
Mhm.
say, "Hey, this worked for me. Maybe it can work for you. We got these similarities." And it's really great to see those relationships turn into something where it's like we can learn from each other, we can grow together, and we know that one another out in the world trying things.
I love that. Anytime we've been able to connect our clients together with people that are working on similar issues or rolling out similar programs, it has been nothing but magical. So if there's an opportunity for you all to do that, I highly recommend that. It's always been valuable for our clients. I love that.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So to close out, intentionally here and on a good note, are there any exciting things happening for you or Converge or anything that you're excited about?
Yeah, we are. We're so excited. Like you said, summer just kicked off. We have two MBA fellows that are with us this summer, and so we're excited this summer to reinvest in Converge. And so we're looking at our processes and looking at better articulating our thought leadership around pieces and capturing our client stories so that we can share those with everyone. So we're excited to just be able to still support our clients, but also work on some of this internal programmatic work, and excited to have our two fellows this summer. So that's exciting.
That's super, super cool. And, I had something scrolling across the bottom of the screen here, but of course, we're producing this for a podcast. So if people want to get in touch with you or with Converge, where can they best do that?
Yes, please reach out to us. We're at convergefirm.com. We on Instagram, Converge Firm as well as LinkedIn. We have a podcast, Converge with Us, and I just closed out season one, and it's really for the busy founder executive that wants to go quick and dirty on a topic, and really get some quick resources. So very practical podcast. Every episode is under 15 minutes, so I'm not going to take up a whole bunch of your time, but definitely check those out and reach out to us. We love talking to people and building partnerships and collaborations and supporting each other's work.
And full disclosure, I don't think we mentioned this, but Valerie is actually an advisor to the Diverity team.
Yes.
And to go back to the podcast for a minute, I listened to an episode just before we went live today, and yeah, what I loved about it was super practical, just very, very clear. And like Valerie said, it's under 15 minutes. Like I think the one I listened to was just a little bit over 9 minutes long. But I really did come away with a lot of things from that. So please do check that out. Check out our podcast as well. Anywhere that podcasts are available, you can check us out on anchor.fm, and that'll take you to all the different outlets that we're on. And let's see, anything else that I got to plug today? Oh, yes, I have a community event coming up on June 30th. So if you're already part of the Diverity PPC Consultant Network, then please do join us for that. That is going to be on leveraging intentional friendships for collective care. So I'd love to see you there. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we will be going live again in 2 weeks with Christina Smith of DEI Strategist. So really looking forward to that. And thank you so much, Valerie, once again. Really such a pleasure to get to know you a little bit and to chat.
Same to you, Enrico. Thank you so much for having me and for all that you do for the community. We really appreciate you.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. Thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody. That's us for today. And this is the DEI podcast. We'll see you next time. Bye.